to the Shades of Entrepreneurship, where we interview entrepreneurs to inspire the future entrepreneur. I'll be your host, Mr. Gabriel Flores. So grab a drink, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. My next guest has been in clinical practice for nearly 2 decades as a chiropractor and a board-certified lifestyle medicine provider. She is the founder of the Wellness Cabinet and a certified instructor of the SMART program. Please welcome Dr. Camilla Moore.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Shades of Entrepreneurship. This is your host, Mr. Gabriel Flores. Today, I'm here with Camilla Moore, which I'm actually really excited about. We were just talking to her earlier. We're going to talk a little bit about the healthcare space, but not too much, not very quickly. In fact, Camilla, the first thing I would like to do is go ahead and introduce yourself. Who is Camilla Moore?
Thank you very much. And thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to have this conversation with you. I'm a doctor of chiropractic. I've been practicing for 17 years. Had my first business, which was my practice. That was a multi-six-figure business, sold that in 2018 and went to work for a big healthcare company here. And have pivoted to doing stress management, burnout trainings, and got a board certification. And I teach and coach mostly online and do workshops in the local area here.
Nice. Now, where is the local area?
So I'm right outside of Providence. I mean, in Rhode Island, like everything's just like a little outside of Providence, to be fair.
Very true.
You know, the biggest joke here is like if you have to cross a bridge, that it's too far, and we're just a bunch of islands, so you don't travel very far. We're right near Brown University. A lot of great resources in the South Coast, about an hour south of Boston, about 3 hours north of New York. So it's a great little spot.
Yeah, no, I actually went to school up in Syracuse, up there in northern New York.
Okay, yeah.
I think people don't realize how, like New York, they kind of generally think the big city. But once you kind of get out of Manhattan and Brooklyn and you kind of go up north, folks, it is like farmland. It's like very much like Oregon, to be honest with you.
It is massive. New York is actually a massive state, and they have my favorite woods to hike in. The Adirondacks are there. And they have Lake Placid, which was where they held one of the Olympic Games. So all of those resources are still there. But there's also the whole Finger Lakes region, which is where my chiropractic school is, near Syracuse, where it snows all the time, every day, no matter what. It's like the cloud cover comes in like October and it leaves in like mid-April.
Yeah, I like the first term at Syracuse, I was an absolute like culture shock. My boots were like they could withstand like negative 300 degrees. I was like, what is going on here? No, very, very, very cold up there. So Camilla, tell us a little bit about you mentioned you're kind of in the wellness practice game.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little bit about what you're currently doing and how'd you get into it?
Yeah, so I am currently, my business is online. I teach what's called the SMART program, which was designed, developed, and studied out of Mass General and Harvard Medical School. So I'm a clinical teacher for that. So I teach that online, either in groups or one-on-one coaching. And I'm developing some other that's a kind of big program, but I'm also developing some shorter, smaller, lower ticket items for people that just want to stop letting their success get in the way of their success, or their stress get in the way of their success. And so that's mostly what I do now. I also do workshops in the local area. So I do guest lecturing at Brown Medical School. I do a lot of work with some of the nonprofits in the area, and some corporate work as well.
Yes, and I'm very familiar with the SMART, and folks, I'll probably actually write a blog post about SMART because it's a really cool way to kind of think about a problem. So check it out, theshadesofview.com. Make sure you just subscribe to that. So tell us a little bit more about the SMART process. Give folks a little bit of background, a little overview. What is it?
So there's two, when we say SMART, there's two commonly used acronyms for that. One is like how you set goals in the SMART goal format. And we actually use that in the SMART program. The SMART program that I teach stands for Stress Management and Resiliency Training. And so that is a whole program. But one of the things that it's all an evidence-based program based on stress management and resiliency training. But in order to change behavior, we change mindset. And one of the ways that we change mindset is by using tools like the SMART goal framework, where you set specific, manageable, actionable, reasonable, and time-based goals. Did I get all those? SMART. And so that's one of the tools that we use within that program. But in a big picture, that, using those SMART tools is just a great way to remove a lot of barriers that go from idea to execution. And so it allows you to think through a lot of the barriers when am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? Is it a reasonable expectation? Is it specific enough to do? And so it's a nice little framework to apply to a lot of different things, especially in business, if you're trying to go from point A to point B.
One of the things you're kind of focusing on is the healthcare industry, working with, healthcare professionals. And folks, I got to be honest with you. I've been in the healthcare industry for over 2 decades now. And there is a real issue with burnout. And I think people also don't kind of forget to understand, or maybe don't make this realization, but most providers are entrepreneurs themselves, right? Private practice clinics, even ones that are actually employed by an academic medical center, they still are kind of asked to kind of go and generate their own business, build their own programs, identify their own research, write their own grants. And that's kind of why my role is really important, because I'm that kind of communication conduit between our internal providers and external providers. But talk about the importance, because folks, I'm going to tell you again, a statistic that I know because I'm in the healthcare world, but unfortunately in the United States, we lose about 300 providers to suicide on an annual basis. That's the size of a graduating class at Oregon Health Science University. So on an annual basis, we lose about the size of a graduating class at OHSU. So tell me, Camilla, get in depth about why it's so important to address burnout, but more importantly, why is it so important within the healthcare profession?
Yeah, that is such a huge topic and conversation. And when you put those numbers into context like you did, it really is like it's a wow moment. And that's really remarkable. The reason I actually work with the Dental Association here in Rhode Island, and I'm going to answer your question in a second, but the way that I got into that group was they lost a dentist last year, 2 years ago, to suicide, and it's a close-knit group here, and it just rocked them. Like still to this day, you can see like when we do presentations and we do workshops, like it is still very much on the surface level. And so when we studied burnout started being studied in the 70s, in the 1970s, and it really was specific to caregiving professions like, physicians and nurses. And they noticed that people were starting to have a series of symptoms, basically, where they were exhausted, fatigued, they were unmotivated, they were very cynical. And this was just very uncharacteristics of that type of provider. And so when they started really looking into it, what we realize with burnout is it's very different than stress. There's 3 different definitions that might be worth just taking a little bit of time and looking at and clearing up just so we can identify what we're talking about. We have regular acute stress, we have chronic stress, and then we have burnout. There's a lot of overlap here, but they are 3 separate and distinct things. So acute stress is a normal physiological response. That is, we have 195 here. So like you're driving down I-95 and you get cut off, you white knuckle it, your heart rate goes up, your breathing goes up, you start sweating a little bit, but then you're able to go back to baseline. The guide, keeps passing you and your body goes back to baseline. And so you're able to have a normal stress response for something that was dangerous, that you perceive to be dangerous. It heightened your awareness, and then you were able to resolve that and recover. Chronic stress is when you have multiple acute stresses and you don't have the ability to recover fully before the next one hits. Or you have a big traumatic event and you haven't had enough time to adequately recover. And so that's where that happens over days, over weeks, over months, over years. And that's where we see our chronic disease come in. We see an increased risk of cardiovascular disease. We have an increased risk of mental illness like depression and anxiety. We see sleep disorders because we are in this heightened alert all the time and we don't have enough time to recover. Burnout is very different. Burnout is an environmental issue. Burnout is when you are giving of yourself, you are giving of your energy, and that is neither seen, heard, appreciated, accepted, or valued at all. And so it's more about us and who we are, and that we are giving to that, either a workplace or a relationship, and we just don't feel like we are being seen. We just don't feel like we are being heard. And it doesn't matter that it's us doing the job. It just matters that we are doing a job. And so when you apply that to physicians and you apply that to the healthcare field, you can see that in the language that they use. It doesn't matter that I'm here. I'm replaceable or you're replaceable. You actually hear people saying this. Employers will say this, like, I am exhausted all the time. What's the point, And you can see this with infighting within, within departments, and you see it coming out in very negative ways. But it's because they are being expected to do things that they, one, didn't really sign up for. And specifically with physicians, the number one issue when it comes to burnout is the administrative tasks. That is the number one. It's not patient care. It is not being a doctor. It is the administrative tasks that go along with it. And I know that people that are outside in the healthcare field, they hear this and they think, oh yeah, every job has that. I don't know if you're able to appreciate how much time your doctor is actually taking to do notes, to do referrals, to fill medications, and they don't have enough time. And the EHR softwares that we have, they base productivity and they base efficiency based on clicks. How many clicks do you see? How many clicks does it take to get this patient from intake to outtake? And so that takes a lot of time. And when you're seeing 30, 40 patients a day, that adds up very quickly. And so, I know when I was worked in the lifestyle medicine department here in the hospital system. And so it was an interdisciplinary office. And the primary cares would be doing notes at 11 o'clock at night on a regular basis. And so those are the things where they're like, this is not doctoring. This is not being a physician. This is really administrative tasks. And it gets very draining very quickly.
Yeah, folks, if for those that are just listening on the audio version, I'm over here just absolutely nodding my head, consistently agreeing with everything, because unfortunately, as much as the electronic healthcare records, like Epic is kind of the beast, is relatively like 60 to 70% of the market share, right? And to Camilla's point, it really is about the clicks, right? About how many times. So we created dot phrases, right? So I can put in dot progress note, and it's going to basically create me a template for progress note. But then we start to lose that human element. So what I mean by that is if a provider goes into a clinic office and they're having a conversation with you, the patient, and the family member that's with them, but they're actually focused on their computer typing up that note, you kind of lose the patient interaction. So what happens then? What's a downstream effect? Well, then that patient goes home and says that the doctor was horrible, gives them a 2-star, and that those stars are now visible everywhere. That doctor starts to stress out because they were actually focusing on writing their notes because they had maybe their child has a rehearsal that evening they were trying to get to. Well, now they're realizing that I actually can't sit there and type on my note during the clinical visit because I might get dinged from my reviews that are public. So now I'm now focusing on the patient conversation, right? Really focusing on the patient. Well, now what's a downstream effect to that? Well, that means after clinic, I'm gonna have to write up that note, right? And to Camilla's point, it's there is a lot of administrative things that I think people don't really understand that goes behind the scenes. New medication that come down, new guidelines. They have to have, surgeons have to have about 160 hours of continuing medical education. Think family medicines are about 120 on an annual basis. And then again, you're constantly seeing, like Camilla mentioned, 20 to 30 patients in a day. Administrative is like, hey, well, we got to turn those beds. What's the length of stay? I need the return on investment, all of these things. And then the last thing, it's like, well, we're still cared about the patient. I must admit, folks, I'm in the business development world, and sometimes it is difficult to go in the conversation to a provider and talk about business. And so I try to level set with them very, very beginning of the conversation and say, listen, we're going to talk a lot about, return on investment. I'm going to talk about volume. I'm going to talk about, trends. However, I really want to make sure we understand that statistics are human beings with the tears wiped away. And so we really level set ourselves. Like, even though we're talking about revenue drivers, we're talking about downstream revenues, we're talking about relationships, the core, the crux of what we're doing, our true north has to be involved with the patient, the family, the care, the providing. And there's a lot of things that come down to it, right? The different devices, the different research models, clinical trials that are open to make sure, some of those clinical trials do not go well. All right. So some of them do not have a good outcomes. And unfortunately, I would first and foremost, every single patient that's been on a clinical trial, thank you very much. What you have done for our society is huge. Those individuals that donate their body to science, the body donation programs, thank you so much for your donation. To the family members that are part of those, thank you so much for allowing us the moment to study these bodies and learn about the human anatomy. Because without those opportunities, folks, healthcare is not going to move forward. Sad but true. And providers are on the front line trying to understand all the differences. If you look at cancer right now, the amount of things that are going on in the cancer world with CAR T immunotherapy is absolutely astounding. The last 5 years in cancer I'm getting goosebumps, honestly, just talking about it, because it's been so awesome. Like, truly, the amount of innovation and things of that nature has been just remarkable. So take a moment to thank your providers, thank your nurses, your PAs, your MAs. These are individuals, their moms, brothers, sisters, cousins, aunts as well. And they also are stressed, right? I think the pandemic also heightened that stress with the lack of trust that the healthcare industry faced due to a lot of misinformation. I'll be completely transparent, folks. There's a lot of misinformation. So make sure just, thank some of these people sometimes. Now, Camilla, you mentioned you were kind of in the healthcare industry. You're working with the large corporations, and then you've eventually pivoted over to this, coaching kind of.
Yeah.
What was that crux like? What made you, how did that decision come about?
So, actually, COVID had a lot to do with it. I'm a chiropractor by trade. We do a lot of holistic stuff, but, my family is made up of healthcare providers. My dad's a PT, my mom was an ICU nurse, my sister's a PhD in nutrition. So we're all over, the board here. And I think I'm with you. Like, both of my parents have had cancer, and we went through a lot of fertility treatments. Like, I owe my family, literally my family, to modern medicine. And it is incredible just seeing, you mentioned the cancer, like just seeing how it's changed with my mom and her breast cancer over the past 5 years, and the recommendations. And she is a phenomenal oncologist. And it is so incredible how minute they can get down to diagnosing the cancers.
Down to the genes. Yeah,
down to the genes. And it was such an education to go through that. And I know my mom, as a former nurse, was like all over it. But I actually forgot how I transitioned. And so anyway, so I was working for the hospital system, and in the lifestyle medicine department, COVID hit. And at the time, I was pregnant with my son, and I had him in the summer of 2020. And it was exhausting. We actually stayed open. Our little department stayed open, and I'll set the stage for you. Everything here shut down in March of 2020. And so I was at this point, 5 or 6 months pregnant. And we had a small little department. Everybody else went remote except for us. And because you can't do chiropractic remote. And so we really stayed open, because at the time our hospital system was furloughing people. They were laying people off, and it was very expensive. So we were still generating enough revenue. We were seeing fewer patients, but nobody could go anywhere else. So for specifically our chronic pain patients, they were still comfortable coming in. And so we were able to continue to move forward and not have to furlough employees. And we were self-sustainable, and we were actually profitable. But then after I came back from maternity leave, it was just exhausting. And it was, what was most exhausting was the day-to-day trying conversations with the misinformation, with trying to help people understand like what it is. And that took just a lot of mental energy to be able to listen to people and help guide them. And I think the first vaccine that was offered here was at the end of December, and I got mine like the second week of January. I was just like, sign me up. And and but that kind of carried through, like that exhaustion kind of carried through. And then there was a shuffle in our hospital system, as there is. We merged with another group. And so I had the opportunity to either continue to go back in private practice, work there, or jump into this. And I had already got my board certification in lifestyle medicine, had decided that I was going to do stress management as a specialty, and was well on my way to getting my certification through Mass General. And so I just jumped, and it's been great. It's really been great. I have a lot more flexibility with my son. He's 4.5 now, so he's in preschool a few days a week. And so I'm able to, pick him up and bring him home and still have that time, and still be able to make some money and really enjoy what I'm doing.
Yeah, it's interesting. I always tell people healthcare never sleeps. Even in the pandemic, it was one of those industries that you really couldn't close the door 24/7, because you do have patients at chronic pain. If you're having patients that have infusion that need to come in and get infused, you mentioned your mother with breast cancer.
Mm-hmm.
10, 20 years ago, that was a death sentence for a lot of patients. And now the survival rate is like 80, 90%. It's very interesting. Even the vaccine, the ability, for folks that are, misinformation, I want you to make sure you go back and understand how that really occurred. It was really almost every single researcher and scientist in the entire country really focused on that one disease. And it was actually because of all the research through AIDS and HIV that they're able to get to that point. So,
thank you, Dr. Fauci.
Thank you, Dr. Fauci. I'm sorry. And you know what, folks? Listen, I did not vote for this individual, but I also want you guys to go back to figure out who funded all of that. Okay. The moonshot and all of these things that occurred. I don't care what your political view is. Again, I didn't vote for that guy. I'm going to be completely transparent. I'm the West Coast. I'm very liberal, but nonetheless, that was still funded by, an individual, actually another person who unfortunately did also provide misinformation about the vaccine, yet was also a benefiter of the vaccine as well. So again, make sure you understand like what's going on and also the history of it, because these things, they didn't just come out of nowhere. This was decades of learning, right? Decades of learning.
Well, and it wasn't just the US that was working on it. Israel was doing a lot of the research that we were piggybacking on too. The whole world was affected by this. But yeah, it was really remarkable how the entire science community was able to just zone in on this one thing. And I'm not sure, because we didn't go through a lot of the 1915, 1918 flu, like we didn't go through that. We've never really experienced this. So I think that we didn't really appreciate how incredible it was that, one, they were able to come up with one, two, that it was so effective, and three, they were able to get them out to people so quickly.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. It was really remarkable, the efficiency of it, and again, the entire world kind of coming together to really solve one problem, or really one mass problem, which is pretty much entrepreneurship, right? Where the goal is to identify a problem, and then, like you did, I think it's very unique that you essentially in the pandemic, you identified a profitable industry, and then you jumped forward. Now, with that said, tell us about that transition. What were some of the difficulties of transitioning from being, I have a consistent paycheck, to now I'm inconsistent? I'm an entrepreneur. I kind of eat what I kill kind of thing.
Well, I had my own business before, so I'm comfortable with that kind of unknown. I also have a very supportive husband. I will say that is, I think having that partner is key. And he's able to support us for the most part. We definitely scaled back a little bit, but I couldn't do this without him, like, being my cheerleader and just saying, like, you got to do it. Because he also saw like how burnt out I was from all of that. But it is a very different approach. When I shifted from selling my practice to being a salaried employee, like it's still a 1099 employee, but my contract was such that I had a consistent income. It was, at the time, it was a breath of fresh air. because there is such a stress with you don't work, you don't get paid. And I've never really had a paid vacation. Even my maternity leave, I worked extra for it to be able to have that. And so it's not an unusual situation for me to be in, but it still is very motivating. And my approach to entrepreneurship is it becomes less about the money. One of the lessons that I learned in practice was if you make your business about the money, it's always going to be about the money and you're never going to have enough. You just never will have enough. But if you can emotionally detach from it, recognize that it's an accounting part of your business and it's numbers, and focus on providing a great service at a reasonable fee and having wonderful customer service, then you're not ever going to have to worry about the money. It will just come in. And so, and the second, and that you need that reality check every now and then because it's tough. Like I quarterly taxes are the bane of my existence. Because like, you just write this huge check and all of a sudden like the operating account drops, and June especially, because like you've got quarterly and 2 quarterlies due. And it's always easy to just get into panicky mode with it. But that's what I remember is 1, you're on the right path. 2, you're always going to have what you need. And 3, double down on the service and provide that service. And if you need that extra care, go do volunteer work that's in your arena, and just go out into the community and start remembering why you're doing this. And the money's part will just dissipate.
Yeah, that's a great point. One of the things we do pretty consistently with our nonprofit, we have a nonprofit Latino founders. Again, folks, you want to learn more about this, check out theshadesofyou.com. I got blog posts on that. But one of the things we really try to encourage our entrepreneurs, and when we're starting to coach them, is really focusing on your true north. What's your value proposition? Because entrepreneurship has some difficult times. There's some difficult days, there's some lonely nights, and very long evenings as well. And it's going to be your passion that's really pushing you forward through those difficulties. And so remembering what is it you're doing it for, to Camilla's point, if you're doing good service and you're doing right, and this is what I tell health folks in the healthcare industry, if you do right by the patient, it's going to support your bottom line. Right. If you have good outcomes, if you have good services, and now in the healthcare industry, actually, truly your reimbursements are based on your outcomes and how well you treat people and your patient satisfaction scores. So now there's actually a financial incentive for us not only to provide quality care, but do it in a way for individuals to feel cared for and about. So it truly is imperative that you actually have good service, but that's also your differentiator. Creating a good service that's your differentiator because you are outstanding, and it's a very, good service is hard to duplicate. That's one thing I'd say.
And we talk about burnout, and one of the foundations of prevention and recovery is finding, as you called it, that true north, and making sure that, because remember what we said, it's about when you're giving of yourself and it's not being seen or heard. And so you have to also make sure that you haven't lost sight of that. What is your primary mission statement? And I think having a mission statement, no matter how small a business you are, that's your reminder, because it is so easy to veer off course, and you need to have that reminder of like, this is why I am doing it. This is why I'm doing it. And so those two things go hand in hand. And that's where, the other aspects of it too are, having your team in place, right? You need to have your people that you trust, your good accountant, an attorney, your malpractice. Like, you have to be able to not worry about those things. Don't do it by yourself. Pay the money, be the professional, and have somebody do that for you, because you need to be able to focus on what you are doing, period.
Yes, I completely agree. I'm learning that with the podcast quite a bit, where I'm really starting to outsource things that it takes up time. And 2, I'm not really good at it. It's nice because I'm kind of going through the process and learning it. Right. Okay. Now I have like a baseline knowledge, so I know if it's good quality or bad quality at least. Right. But at the end of the day, I'm like, I got to outsource these things so I can focus on what are my core competencies. And one of the things you mentioned, Camilla, is the mission statement. I even have my own personal mission statement. what is it? Embrace growth, seek knowledge, lead with purpose. So that's my own mission statement. So folks, like, again, that's something I have it here on the whiteboard. I look at the whiteboard on the daily basis, and it's something I try to really kind of ingrain myself in. So when I am having those, bad days, I kind of look up there. I'm like, hey, embrace the growth, seek some knowledge, right? And lead with purpose, because it's very easy to, running the nonprofit. Sometimes people have different visions, right? We have board members and we have different visions. And sometimes those are crucial conversations that are had. And as a leader, it's imperative you kind of have to take a step back before you respond to certain things, because you want to lead with purpose. You want to have a communication that doesn't really offend anybody, but also make sure we're moving forward together. You don't want to necessarily be a leader that's kind of segregating folks. You want to be a leader that's truly leading and pushing people in the right direction. And sometimes that's not your direction. And so I think that's where the mission statement, the value proposition come into place, because if you start to veer off what your true values are, it's that mission statement that's going to bring you back in. Are we going a little too far? Is it within the scope of what we're trying to do? And so making sure you're true to yourself is very, very important. And I love the idea of creating a mission statement, whether you're an organization or a small business or an individual like myself. Having one is important. Now, Camilla, you mentioned this is your you've actually done an entrepreneurial endeavor before. What was your first business?
Yeah. So I started my private practice. And I started that like late, I think it was like 2012, 2013, and had that for 5 years before I sold it. And when I started that, I was coming out of a very toxic environment. I had lost a lot of money. And so I had to actually start day one and go. Like, I was on the ground running day one. I just didn't have no room for stress, no room for that overthinking, and so I decided that with this new chapter, I was going to start making every decision based on my intuition. I was really going to listen, and this goes hand in hand with what you're saying with that mission statement, is I knew what I was doing and I knew why I was doing it. And that was my compass. And so I didn't have time to overthink about, this chair or that chair, or this EHR software or that EHR software. I didn't have time because I needed to start seeing patients and getting revenue in. And it was an incredible lesson in stress and anxiety and overthinking, and also in just trusting your intuition that you are going to get there and it is already okay. And so I had that business for 5 years. I sold that in 2018 and then went to work for the hospital system here. And here's where I am.
Let's talk about how you start the business, because one thing, you're in the healthcare space, so it's a little bit different, right? Your marketing tactics and your branding tactics are a little bit different. So tell us a little bit how you actually grew your business. How do you target who is your target audience, one, and how do you reach them?
Now or back then?
Let's do now. Let's do our business right now.
So one of the things that I learned from my first business was I'm a specialty service now, right? I'm very niche. I do stress management and burnout for usually high achieving professionals that are looking to stop their stress from getting them to the next level, or helping with that work-life balance. We work with a lot with women entrepreneurs and small business owners. And I learned in my first practice, totally lost my train of thought there. I totally lost it.
No, you're good. We're talking about how you market and brand to your customers.
Oh yeah. So in my private practice, I was specialty. I did a lot of soft tissue work. I had a specialty certification in myofascial release. So I did a lot of work with sports injuries and repetitive use injuries. So I opened my first office in a gym. And so made some great connections with the business owner, with the owner of and they had 4 different local gyms with the trainers. I got some great relationships going with the trainers. And so it was like shooting fish in a barrel, because I was being able to offer the services that they needed right there in the gym. And so I started with just one room. And because I was specialized, there was nobody else doing what I was doing in this area. I would also volunteer at road races and bike races. And so I would just do like a quick assessment at the end. I would just, set up my portable table again, my trusty husband and our dog. You just go and set up a tent, and I just offer like a quick little evaluation, and we do some soft tissue work. And then I would call them the next day and just say, look, just wanted to follow up, see how you're doing, which is one, the responsible thing to do. And two, it also was a second level of connection. And I just said, if you need anything else, we're here. If you'd like to make an appointment, we can finish working on this. And I had great results from just that. And, our goal was about 10 new patients a week, which is high, but we did it. Like every week we did it. And it was just a lot of hard work in that sense, but you have to be smart, because the more you understand who your niche audience is, the easier it is to go after them. And so now I do the same thing. Like I do podcasts where entrepreneurs are listening. I do podcasts where female entrepreneurs are listening. I do talks at the medical school. I go to where my people are. And that being able to understand, and again, it goes back to that mission statement, identifying what you are doing, who you are doing it for, and how you are going to do it. And the more clear you are on that, the easier it's going to be for people to find you. And that's the mentality, is like, they're there. They need your services. People need your services. You just have to tell them that you're here, and then give them a very easy path to get to you.
Yeah, folks. I mean, at the end of the day, nobody's going to brand for you. Nobody's going to market for you. And one of the things, Camilla, you mentioned a few times now, for real quick, shout out to all the significant others out there that are allowing us entrepreneurs to do all this crazy stuff. Without you individuals, truly, my wife in particular is my stress reliever for sure. She's definitely always there and has my back. So I really do appreciate all those significant others. Now, with that said, another thing you mentioned was going out to different events, and actually providing you free services, right? Free, a quick 10 minutes here, 15 minutes there. That's, folks, that's a very good strategy for any business. You can go out to makers marks, you can go out to farmers markets, you can go out to Saturday markets. There's all these opportunities to do things. And again, the strategy, I really like the strategy, go into where your target audience may be, right? Going to a high stress race, right? After a marathon, people are a little stressed or tired. They got some veins, right? I'd recommend one of the individuals I've been working with and coaching is making out some lotion. I'm like, you should go to one of those, like the wedding shows they have like, they sell all those. Yeah, the expos. I'm like, go there with your lotion, send out a bunch of free samples. There'd be women there. That's your target audience. Give out free samples before you go out and buy 10,000 units of lotion. Let's make sure they work, right? Make sure you have a audience. And one of the things too, folks, is making sure that it's a value of them, right? Whether it's a pain relief, stress relief, or a product or service, make sure it's a value. And then the service it needs to be great, right? That's kind of your bread and butter.
And I'm going to add to that too, if I may, because it's not just going out and going out to races for me or going out to the wedding expos. You also then have to be smart, because you can't just let them go and think they're going to come back. That bottle of lotion should have a QR code that goes to your website or links to, your email list or something, but you want to capture their information before they leave. And so that's one of the other keys. If you are the one that's initiating the conversation, if you are the one that's initiating the emails, that's the position that you want to be in, because then you can control the narrative. But that's why, like, everybody signed up. Like, you had to put your name and your email address. I didn't ask for phone numbers. But that's not true. I did ask for phone numbers because I did call them. But they didn't have to. I would email them. But you want to have some way of contacting them, because it's a lead. And if you're just going out and giving your stuff away for free, that's where it's not worth it. But if you're getting their information back, and over time you can send them sales, you can send them newsletters, you can send them, new things in your office. You don't know what they're going to need down the road. And that was a great lesson I learned. We'd have people come in like a year after that I treated them at a race, and I totally forget who they were, but then have to pretend that I didn't. And They were, and then they'd be a patient for a while, and the best thing that they could do is to go out and say good things about you. That was always my goal, is to just, regardless of whether I could help them or I ended referring them out somewhere, I wanted them to have a good experience and be able to say good things about me and my office staff.
Yeah. And folks, Camilla, essentially what she's highlighting is the marketing funnel, and this is actually something I wrote about. By all means, check it out on theshadesofyou.com. Make sure you subscribe to the newsletter. But the marketing funnel, the importance of that the email, right, is to get them to that newsletter. So then you kind of have a point of contact, because essentially, as Camilla's mentioning, one, I want to get that point of contact to now become a customer, right? One that actually comes in my clinic, gets services. And then after they get those services, you want to make them a loyal customer. As Camilla's mentioning, now they're going out there and they're talking about your service. Now, that's free marketing and advertising. One thing I would recommend, folks, if you guys are doing like a trade show, just like Camilla was mentioning, if you have the opportunity, another cool thing to do is think about like giveaways. So if you have like a product or service, like, hey, by the way, leave your business card, your name and email. We're going to give away a free massage, or we're going to give away this free product, right? But really the end goal for you is to capture as much contact information as possible so you can put it in your CRM, your customer relationship management tool, or whatever you use, right? And then you can kind of begin to follow that customer, because at the end of the day, the cost of a new customer supersedes the cost of retaining a customer. So once you actually get that customer, like things I mentioned too, if you go onto the shadesofyou.com website and you go in the shop right now and you put a sweater in your shopping cart and you don't purchase it, well, guess what? Here's a little trick for you, folks. If you actually put it in your shopping cart and you walk away, well, a couple days later, I'm going to send you a discount for that shirt or sweater, because I want you to purchase it, right? I'm trying to take you from evaluating the product to purchasing the product, right? And that's all about that marketing funnel. And then once you purchase the product, I'm going to probably send you an email. Hey, did you like it? Could you write a review on Google for me? Would love for you to write a Google. I'll give you another 10% off your next item, because again, that Google review, it's not only going to go on Google, I'm going to put that dang thing on my website too and say, hey, by the way, in 2025, this person said this about my product. So again, it's continuously building up the brand. And I really like what you're mentioning is, you have to be smart about it. It's not just about, marketing and a shotgun approach. Exactly.
Well,
now, go
ahead.
for it.
You had mentioned something. It's 3:00 in the afternoon, so I've been up since 4:30. Because that's when you talk about like being a mom and an entrepreneur. Like that's when I get up to get my workout in. But it's one of the main shifts from looking at through the lens of an employee versus an entrepreneur is looking at currency and value. And so there's a difference between cost and value. And that's where, going back to what you recommend, which I also recommend, of having your team of people, your accountant, your attorney, your insurance guy. There is a cost to having them, but there is also a value in peace of mind of, if something, God forbid, does happen, that you are covered. That has a value in it. And so when you're talking about going through an expo, or I did business expos as well. You are looking at that and saying, okay, so this is going to be 4 hours on a Saturday. Time is the most valuable currency. So if I'm going to give 4 hours of family time to my work on a Saturday, what am I going to get back from that? And so that's where you can start looking at the difference between cost and value. What are you getting out of it? And time is a currency, money is a currency, but also your expertise is a currency. That doesn't necessarily come away for free either, because everybody wants something for free, but you have to look at that free gift that you're giving has value to them. And that shift is very powerful, because it allows you to be less afraid of the money part and be able to make the smart decisions to grow.
Yep. Yeah. And, a great example of that is the cell phone carriers right now. I mean, how many times you see a commercial either for AT&T or Verizon or whoever it is, hey, jump on our service plan and you get a free phone, this $1,000 phone for free. That's a value, right? And then the other part comes in when you start to try to cancel your subscription.
Yeah.
Right now it's like, wait, before you leave, I'll give you another 50% off, and I'll give you HBO Max and all these other things. Because again, the cost of a new customer is to retain a customer. The amount of money it goes into to actually get a customer into the door and to purchase your item is very high versus the amount of money to retain them. So think about that as you're growing your business. Now, Camilla, who would you define as your primarily target audience? And then how do individuals contact you if they're interested in your services?
So my ideal client, my niche is people that are in their 30s, 40s, 50s that are either professionals and they're high achieving professionals or small business owners or entrepreneurs that are really looking to go to the next level, but know that they are either too stressed or they're afraid of being burnt out. Or a lot of my clients are women where they're trying to do this work-life balance thing and it's just not working. And I've been through that myself. I know what that's like. But if you are trying to get to that next level and you're not sure how to get there and your mind is getting in the way, your stress is getting in the way, those are the people that we're looking for. And and if there's some sort of fear, that's what we're going to address, because at the root of all stress is fear. And so we have to start addressing, what is stressful and why before we can actually start fixing it. So those are my people. And so I'm on LinkedIn. And I'm also on Instagram a lot. I'm in Instagram, daily. Dr. Camilla Moore is my handle there, and you can find me on LinkedIn too. But my Instagram has been actually a lot of fun, and there's a lot of great information there. And you'll be able to sign up for the courses that I have there too.
Perfect. And again, folks, all of this will be on the Shades of Entrepreneurship. So check out theshadesofE.com. Make sure you subscribe to the newsletter. We'll have Camilla's information. And yes, I would highly recommend people look up the anger iceberg. That's one thing I've been going through myself and understanding. The anger is actually, there's a lot of underlying emotions that cause anger. And so identifying what those underlying emotions are. And then now I'm starting to go back to even further, like, okay, well, what is the root cause of these underlying emotions? And again, folks, nobody's perfect. I'm probably more transparent on this podcast about my own mental journey and physical journey than I am even with my own family. And so family, if you're listening to this, you're welcome. I'm very open and honest about what I'm going through, but it's important because I'm just not trying to create this podcast for myself and to, become famous. That's not the case. I don't think I'm gonna get famous on the podcast anytime soon, but my goal is to kind of try to help our community and really use my own life experiences and my own personal journey and saying, listen, I'm also going through this too. Nobody's perfect. The last person that was perfect walked on water, and the world didn't treat that individual too well, apparently. So maybe perfection isn't something that we really want to achieve anyways. And again, those social media handles, those perfectional, social media channel, again, perfection is also impossible to obtain. So don't judge yourself on the perfectly curated social media channel because it does take a couple of takes before you would post some of those things, because we want the best, right? You want to be perceived as the best in the community. But personally, take moments to ask people how they're doing. Feel free to reach out to me. I'm also on LinkedIn. I'll make sure to connect with you on LinkedIn. But yeah, feel free, again, talk to each other, make sure everybody's good. Now, website, where can people learn more about your business?
They can go to thewellnesscabinet.co, which will probably be redirected to Dr. Camilla Moore soon. But either one of those, if you just Google my name, it will come up. But the Wellness Cabinet is the name of my business.
Perfect. Again, folks, all this information will be available on theshadesofE.com. So make sure you subscribe. You can also visit us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and TikTok. Although the TikTok, I must say, I've been kind of sunsetting it a bit. I don't dance enough for their algorithm. So I think they want a little bit more out of me, and I'm just not giving it. Camilla, thank you again so much for your time. I really do appreciate the conversation. Great conversation. Again, a lot of work being done in the healthcare industry and a lot of work being done in the mental health space. That is very much appreciated. So thank you very much for your time. For those folks listening at home, thank you and have a great night.
Thank you for tuning in to the Shades of Entrepreneurship. For more information, please follow the Shades of E on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, or visit theshadesofE.com.